Welcome, everyone. It's another Tuesday night show and share, and a special Tuesday night as it's February 14th. On behalf of Knox Makers, I would like to wish you all a happy member-tine. Oh. Okay, enough of that. I'm just happy food didn't get thrown at me. Speaking of food, brought some cookies in, little hearts on the hospitality table, so help yourself. Next up, we have show and shares. It's time for us to watch what you're making as you're making it, progress shares, if you will, completed projects, and the all-important failures. We celebrate those as well as a way for all of us to learn. Susanna, how about let's see your recycled fashion and a happy round. Hopefully they're not in the failure mode.
That's certainly not the plan. Alrighty, so I have two things today because I found out about one of them yesterday. And the thing that I found out about yesterday is there's going to be a fashion show out at IMS, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I don't know. But it's going to be out there in April, and it's a fashion show for sustainable materials or recycled or that sort of thing. So I was coming here and I passed by Carm on the way here, so I stopped and I got some materials that I can recycle. So the deadline to have this done is by March 1st. So, for this year, will it happen this year? I don't know, but I'm going to give it a shot. And these are my materials, and we'll see in a couple weeks if I get it done in time or not. It might be a next year project. We'll find out. But I have materials now, and I'm pretty excited about that. And I thought it would be cool for everybody to know about that so that y'all can plan accordingly too, other fabric-y people that like to recycle things. My other thing is my Happy Coat, which some of you guys saw last year, and I made this, my daughter and I put this together. I did the drawing, and then she sent it out and had it dye sublimation printed and put together, and then we got them back for our department at Otakon, which is an anime convention that we're on staff for, and we go to DC every summer for. And it was a big hit, and I'll pass this around so people can see it and see what a Happy Coat is like. But anyway, it was a big hit at Otakon, and in fact, some people were kind of angry because they're like, we want one, and I'm like, well, you gotta be part of the hallway costume contest, and they're like, we're not gonna do that because there's only 8 of you, and, make us one. So I just yesterday finished up the drawing for a new one for a larger chunk of the folks. And this is it right here. I did all of this work for both of them on my iPad. So this is all done as a vector file, and that's how you do it so that you can send it out and then have it dye sublimation printed. But anyway, this is the design, and it's going to be sent out, and it will turn into nice Happy Coats just like that. But it's going to be a lot more of them this time because I gotta take care of those people who want their nice Happy Coats, and those are my things. And I guess while I'm standing up here, I'll also say that on Friday I'm going to be teaching a class on learning how to draw. I won't get you here in the 2 hours, but it's a journey, and you can come and start, and whatever you would like to do draw wise, if you're interested in learning how to do drawings and other things on computer and tablets for printing out, I can help with that too. But we're going to start out with pencil and paper, and it's going to be fun, and there'll be wine. Yeah, so if you're old enough, it's going to be a good time. And if you're not, it'll probably be a good time too, but it'll be different. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you, Susanna. Are those 3 pieces the back and the sides of? Okay. All right. Well, next up is Paul with the button, and somehow I don't think it's a fiber arts button. That's,
I like keyboards, mechanical keyboards, a lot. I make them from time to time and have several. So this is the key switch from a mechanical keyboard. They go in a plate in a box. We're doing a class on this, by the way. Me and the legendary Ray Crampton teaching mechanical keyboards. So I said, well, that's cool. And then Tim posted a picture of one of these. It's a little bigger, and it's the exact same key switch, just 65 times larger. So I got it yesterday and 3D printed a little box for it. And what's great about Arduino and these little microcontroller development kits you can get is they're dirt cheap, and you can make things do all sorts of other things. And they've got an HID library for human interface devices, which is what you would have a keyboard. So the HID works with the phone because it's built in, and then I'm programmed a macro in here, so when you press the button, it says, well, it's not doing it because I was in a message with myself. Apparently you can't do that. But come on now, you know you want to. Try it again. There we go. Shopcat for president. So whenever I press this, it blinks and says Shopcat for president. So our class is going to be not this scale, unless you want to buy a button this scale. We're starting from nothing and talking about how to get to something like this or even something like this, because the scale of it is really irrelevant because it's just copying and pasting the same thing over and over again. But you can program them to do all sorts of things, like say you have an example I use is the Zoom meetings and the Teams meetings. They have a hotkey combination you have to press to mute the microphone. Well, I don't want to hit that on my keyboard every time, so I can make a big button to do it for me. Just slap that. That will be starting next Wednesday, the 22nd. There are tickets available. Sign up on the website. Tracy?
Is that every Wednesday?
It's for 6 sessions, I think, is what we got it scheduled for. Yeah. Well, the dates are on the calendar. There's going to be some times where we're not doing anything because we're waiting for stuff to get shipped in from wherever we're having our circuit boards fabricated from. And then if there's need to have some extra time to get things polished up at the end, we can still meet with people to do that as well. And if you're interested, please sign up. We've still got slots available and it should be fun.
So, it sounds like you're able to input keystrokes then?
Yeah, human interface device, HID, is just a standard set of commands, or set of key codes. And when you plug the USB in, the computer says, oh, you're a keyboard. And then the device just says, here's a key code. So you can program it to send whatever key code you want. I've just got a little controller in there, just wired into the switch and some LEDs. And that's pretty much it. And you can have them do actual keyboard things where you can type on them, or you can, it's because you can build a keyboard. This is my number pad from home that I use to enter numbers with, and it's just a bunch of hot glue and wires on the backside on the 3D printed thing, but it works just like every other keyboard. And you can, with the macros, you can have them send most anything. Like text is pretty easy, like just a string of text. Certain more advanced stuff like switching windows is a little bit harder because you have to be able to talk back to the device so it kind of knows where it is. But it's pretty robust with what you can do with them. I encourage people, if they have any interest in it, to check it out. Anybody else got a question? Yes.
So this is going to be a class?
Yes.
Is this going to design a computer, or is it just kind of using Arduino's?
Start with, this is how a keyboard works, and then we design our keyboards, what we want them to do, how they're going to look. And then we design the PCBs for them and send those off to get fabricated. Then we design the cases that hold them together, because there's multiple parts, like the plate and then the base part, and then we fabricate those, laser, 3D print, wood, whatever you want, and then We are going to assemble the PCBs when they get here, put the controller on, solder everything, program the firmware, and then everybody goes home with a thing that does buttons. So it's start to finish. You don't have, like, you probably should know a little bit about electronics and a little bit about programming, but it's not super advanced because we're doing a lot of template-based stuff. If you took the KiCad class that was just taught, that's got a lot of the same overlap there, and you actually get a discount for taking that and then taking this.
Certainly not a fiber arts, but
No. Do we have a button maker?
really?
Do we have one?
Oh, no. But we do have a 3D printer.
We have a 3D printer,
Yeah, I bet it could make buttons.
but you can't like put the plastic thing on the dough and you know.
Oh, like Play-Doh?
No,
It's-
it's like a button press thing. It's got like an aluminum cap, and you print something out, and you put it on the button, and then you smash it down, and it puts a piece of plastic over it, and wraps it around the button.
Ah.
You know, like the old days in
Yeah.
president button.
Yes,
That's-
exactly. They used to advertise in the back of like Boys Like magazine, Imagine It.
So Brian,
So, although I've got that.
Brian has that. I know I used to have a cloth cover, button cover. I have no idea where that's at, but I don't know about a plastic one. But Brian has offered up his. Next up, we have Joe Pardue, prototyping laser cuts with a 3D printer. Now that sounds like mixing and matching our zones.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of a weird concept because you think with the 3D printer, you can just cut things out real quick. I mean, you can, 3D printer, it takes a while to print an object. With the laser cutter, you can bing, bing, cut it right out. So little background, I used to have kind of a side company where I would sell educational electronic stuff. And that faded out. And then a few years ago, just for the fun of it, I built a little robot about a little bigger than my fist that could draw pictures and write. And let me see if I can get this thing. Okay, it's in there somewhere. So some of you have already seen this. Some of you saw the robot. Go. Why is it not going? What? Oh, it's going. Why is it? Oh, there you go. So that's speeded up a lot. It's actually a lot slower. In a second, you'll see it slows down. It's writing Knox Makers backwards because I programmed it in, and when I started up, it wrote it backwards. It's like, oh yeah, it would do that the way I programmed it. But anyway, you can't tell a lot from that. However, last week, Tim Klein gave a little bit of a talk about how he was making connection devices using laser cutter prints, laser cutter objects, and he had ways of hooking them together. And that reminded me of my technique for doing this work. And so I brought this in to show him, and he's not here. So that's great. I'll just show y'all instead. My work, the way I work this out is I mentioned possibly commercializing it. If I commercialize it, I definitely want to farm it out and have someone laser cut all the pieces because it'll be fractional of what it would cost to 3D print the pieces, right? But I don't have a laser cutter. I've got a 3D printer. And to design a robot like this, I have to design and make a lot of parts, test them, and generally they don't work exactly like I wanted them, so I redesign and I keep on going through the process. And so rather than having to basically drive in every day here and use the laser cutter, I came up with a technique for using my 3D printer to prototype the parts that I would then laser cut. Now the first thing I would do is I would draw the parts and in Illustrator, Inkscape, and I'd cut them out and tape them to cardboard, and then I'd fit all the pieces together, and if that worked, the next thing I would do is I would take the parts from Inkscape, and I would import it. That was an Inkscape's SVG file, and I'd import it into SCAD and give it a third dimension, which is 3 millimeters, which is about the width of the of this stuff, the birch that we can't get. And then I could fit things together, and it's like, okay, so does this work? Yeah, that works. That doesn't work. That's supposed to sort of work. But anyway, so I would do interim pieces like this, and I wanted to make it cheap and simple. So I came up with using, what? Oh, sorry. I came up with using zip ties instead of screws. And you can see this piece is the laser cut piece, and this is a 3D printed piece. They're not exactly identical, but they're very close. And to make a short story long, what Tim was showing was how things, how he put things together. And I got, for instance, this guy actually, was a part that, I forget exactly what it was supposed to do, but I see these little teeth on here, and then there's little teeth on this side, and that fits together, and when you press it in, it's pretty sturdy. It's a way of building things, and I, of course, prototyped that with a 3D printer, and yeah. I got a few other things in here, this is the thing that shows it probably the best. This was the base, and this was the base that I 3D printed, and then this was the base there, that's cut with a laser cutter. And there's a few other things in here I just threw in case people were curious about it. This is a wheel, and this is a wheel that 3D printed, and I printed a groove in this. You can't see very well, but I put an O-ring on them. Both of them have O-rings, and they make a really good wheels for little robots because they're not as slippery. And this has got a way of 3D printing to put a screw in there to tighten, to hold it to the motor shaft. So you might want to look at that. Anyway, I'm going to pass this out, and if people want to just open it up and look at it, you might find that you can do some prototyping and some making using this technique. Any questions? Okay, thank you. I'll pass it on.
So Joe, I did have one. Your robot only writes, it doesn't fight? Yeah. Your robot, it only writes, it doesn't fight?
No, it does not fight, but it draws pictures and it can draw up skulls and crossbones.
Ooh. All right, now we're talking. Next up is another Joe on quilting and mushrooms.
Yeah, I know that's a weird combination of things, but my wife, she's into quilting, and one of my hobbies is growing mushrooms. Well, on the quilting part, she's a member of a local quilting group. Last year, her quilting group made and donated over 600 quilts to Children's Hospital. So, side note to that is, she's also found a place over here, it's just right down the road from here, South Knoxville Community Center. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 to 1, they have a fabric exchange workshop. So anybody who sews and quilts or whatever, if you have fabric you don't need, bring it over and donate. If you want to go look and see what they've got, come over, get what you need. And she's been making a lot of projects and stuff. But anyway, with her quilting, one of the things she uses a lot is it's what's called a clapper. And you know, you hear a clapper, you think it's a thing you clap your hands, turn the light on and off. But these are actually used for in tailoring and in sewing to press the seams. You iron a seam, you set this on top of it, presses the seam flat, and because it's raw wood, no finish on it, it absorbs any moisture that's left when you press the seam. So been doing some maple and some poplar, and then I laser engrave a pattern on them. And so far I've sent out several of these across the country to different states. And let's see. Where's the minus button? There it is. Let me zoom out. These are about 9.5 inches long, 3 inches wide, and about 2 inches thick. And here's another one. And it's kind of hard to read the text here unless I really zoomed in on it. But these are some of the things I've been making for her quilting group. And one of the ladies in her group has a long arm quilting machine. And for business, she will, if you make a quilt top and need it quilted, this lady quilts them. She wanted some of these for her shop. She bought 5 of them last week. She messaged me tonight. She needs more. So they're getting to be popular. And another thing I make for the quilting groups that and I've sold quite a few of these in craft shows is seam rippers and the needle cases. And I went to a place a few months ago I needed to get some wood chips used for landscaping around the yard. And I asked the guy, "Did you get any unusual looking pieces of wood?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I got a couple of pieces over here on the back of the truck. It's, the guy was going to take home and never did that used to work here. Ugliest looking piece of wood. It was black, little bump all over it and stuff. I cut it in some pieces, put it on the lathe, and turned it. And does this focus? Let's go in a little bit. It's a burl of some sort. I think it's maple. And but we did some craft shows last fall. Sold the daylights out of these, and matter of fact, I got to build inventory because I'm about sold out. Because April there's a Big South Fork has their spring planting festival, and they do craft shows up there and stuff. But these just turn around and stores like that. And I don't have the other one with me. That I found these little plastic tubes, and they're basically 2-liter Coke bottles that have not been inflated. And they're perfect to hold these in. And I sell these with a replacement blade, which this is one of the few seam rippers I've seen that you can actually replace the blade just by unscrewing it, pulling the blade out, stick the new blade in, and tighten it back down. So we do a lot of. She does a lot of quilting. She's working on one right now that she's 3 years ago she was, or almost 4 years ago, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And during her chemo session, she was sewing this quilt together. She's just about got it finished quilted. And we're 3 years out, she's cancer free. Now on the mushroom side, like I said, I've got too many interests. I get into too many things sometimes. And I like to grow mushrooms. I got into it buying some of these little kits that you can find at Lowe's or Home Depot or stuff like that. And, they were like $20 and you'd get, a little bit of mushrooms off of them. Well, I got into doing it a little bit more seriously. And the other day, I harvested that. Those are blue oysters in 4.5 days, they went from little bitty pins that just barely showed up on the side of the sawdust pile to that. They're unbelievable how fast, you never realize how fast mushrooms can grow. Matter of fact, this is that same block 3 days before. So, and then you never think of mushrooms being in color. This doesn't really show the color great, but these are pink oyster mushrooms, and they grow very fast also. And I've got, you know, some of the sizes I've been getting off of them. You can see from comparing to my hand. Let's see if we go out a little more. You know, that's a good size flush of mushrooms. So, but yeah, on the wooden clappers, that's just a stack of some of the ones I've got done. Like I said, I've sent out a bunch in the last few weeks. Biggest problem is postage. You send them across country, it costs it's a bunch. But I did find out a new posting method. There's a thing called pirate ship postage. It's $2 or $3 cheaper than what U.S. postage is, but it still ships through U.S. Postal Service. They have some sort of contract with them, and they send them. And then one other thing here, we have a cat that likes to hang out with my wife's quilting, and here's a quilt she's working on, and Leo didn't like the quilt layout, so he's starting to move blocks around for her. So when we got this, I call him the terrorist. His name's Leo. I call him the terrorist because he likes to make a mad dash into my room where I have my laser engraver and jump up on the table. Fortunately, he hasn't done it while the laser's been running, or he would have ruined a piece of work, and he may have ended up with a permanent marking on his body. Okay, welcome.
Any questions?
Yeah. I am using LED lights. In fact, let me show you my little grow setup here real quick. I went to Rural King, and they had these little greenhouses. Like that. Yeah, there you go. That's about 30 something inches wide, about 19 inches deep, and about 5 feet high, and I've got it set up on a stand. I bought a humidifier used for reptile enclosures and have it piped up to the top. And since this one, I've got a third level. I've got 3 levels that have light on them and one that doesn't. I've installed an exhaust fan at the top. I got 2 interval timers. One of them controls the humidifier, so it will kick on the humidifier for 4 or 5 minutes, and then it'll leave it off for like 45 minutes. I have another interval timer that turns on the ventilation fan for a couple of minutes and then leaves it off for like 30 minutes. And then I have a third timer for cycling the lights on and off. Oyster mushrooms, some of the earlier ones I grew, if you start getting real long stems on them and the heads that don't really form out well, you have a high CO2 level. So you have to drop the CO2 level down, and then they'll start doing better. I've harvested, I started out, like I said, using the little kits. Then I started playing around. I ordered the grow bags, and I use wood pellets like you use for wood stoves. And I've used straw, I've used cardboard. One of the craziest things to use, and it works, is take a roll of toilet paper, pull the core out of the center of it, put it in boiling water, pull it out, let it cool, put that in the mushroom, the grow bags, pour grain spawn in there, seal it up, put it in the dark area for a few weeks, and bring it out, let it get light, and then cut some slits in the side of it, and just mist it with a spray bottle a couple of times a day, and you can get them, they'll come out like crazy. And I've started.
All those mushrooms,
Eat them. And, yeah, we have mushrooms several times a week. Yeah.
Are you, getting your own pour water and re-inoculating from them?
Yeah, I have been taking, I've actually taken a friend of mine brought me some wild oysters that were growing on her property, and I did some tissue transplants into a liquid culture and have grown those out to now I've got a jar that has, it looks like it's got a little cotton fluff floating around in it. I've got a magnetic stir, and I've taken some of that and I've transferred it to grain. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen there. But I've got probably a dozen jars of different types of mushroom culture growing on my shelves around my computer room. So always playing with things. That's the problem about being ADHD.
Those are some beautiful mushrooms. I like the pink ones. Well, let's go for something a little harder, like a blacksmithing coat hanger from Eric.
One of the reasons I joined the club here was because I found out you guys had the blacksmithing class, and it's something that I've been wanting to work with for years and years. I didn't make this here. I haven't had the opportunity to use it that much, but I went to the John C. Campbell Folk School in North Carolina last week, and they had us making lots and lots of hooks. And it ended up being the last day we were able to take the hooks and make them into something else. It's hard to see. Basically, we got a 2-inch piece of mild steel that's been hammered around the edge with a rounding hammer. And then the 1-inch piece on top has been textured with a ball peen hammer. And we took the little squares and cut some diagonals in them in there to add some spice, and then took 2 of our hooks and riveted them onto the back. So had a really good time. It was actually an anniversary gift from my wife to send me up there, or down there. And it was a blast, and I thought I'd just bring it up by here and show it. Anybody have any questions? I'll pass.
With the button in the middle?
Yeah. And I'll pass that around. Oh, go ahead.
How long did it take?
How long did it take to make this? About 20 minutes. The first hooks that we made took about 3 hours. So you pick it up pretty quick. So I'll pass it around.
How did you get the little squares on there? Are they riveted too?
Yeah.
All right, now back to plants. Well, maybe dead plants. Amy, you have some plant dyes for us?
That might be a little misleading. I already used it, so it's actually the yarn that I dyed. Last fall, I think I mentioned to a bunch of people that I was learning how to make plant dyes with native plants here. Mostly from, hold on, there it is. There's one more thing in the bag somewhere. There we go. Mostly plants from my friend's backyard, because she is a botanist and knows what things are. I do, so the first 2 that we did, I used to make a hat. So the bottom one here was grape leaves, which usually by itself creates kind of a yellow, but if you add iron, it'll turn into an olive green. It's not olive green. I did not use enough iron. Apparently, I was supposed to let it rust for a while and then use the rusty water instead of just tossing it in as I boiled the leaves. But it's not green. It's just not olive. It's kind of, if you compared it to a real yellow, it's kind of, you can kind of see it. And then this up top is, I don't know how well, yeah, it looks it's pretty clear, I think, is a really bright yellow from goldenrod, which unsurprisingly produces a goldenrod yellow when you use it as a dye. Oh, this is all wool, by the way. I think I've never tried dyeing plant fibers, but I think you need to use different chemicals to make it stick compared to animal fibers. This is not quite as dark as it looks on camera. If I hold it up for everyone else, it's maybe clear that it's a little bit lighter than it looks on camera. This is walnut husks and also iron, which this time I remembered to let rust first. It's a little scratchier. I think it's partly the tannins in the walnut husk that make the wool feel scratchier than the other dyes, but I think it came out a really nice shade. If you really look carefully, like holding the ball, you can tell there's a little bit of variation because we were doing this in my friend's kitchen with just like a normal stock pot. So we had to, if we wanted to do 400 grams, we were like really stuffing it in there. So it didn't dye like perfectly evenly, but it kind of looks like you did it intentionally or that we did it on purpose. So that's nice. But yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So when you're getting ready to dye the yarn, is it in the loop form?
Yeah.
Or is it just all every which way?
So we just bought skein, the loop thing. So like, in case anyone else is wondering, it's like you sometimes see those like twisted things of yarn rather than balls. It's like a loop and then you twist it. We bought it like that just to open it up a little bit and then yeah, straight into the pot and we boiled it. Yeah.
How long do you have to boil it?
Depends on the plant. With the walnut, I don't know if how many people remember seeing back in the fall. I posted a photo of my hands that were like completely black. That was from the walnut husk because it dyes really strongly. That one we just boiled the actual husks for like 45 minutes, and as soon as you put the yarn in, first you have to like heat the yarn, put some like alum and stuff to make any dye stick. But like once you have that, you put the yarn straight in and immediately it just sticks. With these two, the yellow and the green, I think those each we kept the yarn in the bath for something like an hour in order to get it to stick. So it depends. Yeah.
Does that walnut dye come out of the yarn when you're using it?
So I've only knitted one thing with this, and when I got it all wet to block, barely anything came out. Surprisingly, it stuck pretty well. Well, I guess it's not that surprising because it stuck really well to my hands. It took weeks to come off. Actually, it didn't come off. It came off when my skin came off, so that was fun. Yeah, black walnut. There's 2 trees in front of my office, so I literally was standing in front of my office, like, picking them from the ground, and, like, a bunch of people were walking by. It was great. Cool. I think that's it. Cool.
Thank you, Amy. I'm glad it was your hands and not mine. Yeah, I also found that when I was making blackberry pie. Yeah. All right, so we're going to go from a blacksmithing coat hanger to a modern coat hanger from Wes.
All right, so I can't believe nobody told Joe what sounds like he might be a fun guy to hang out with. Only a few people got that. That's all right. So this is a work in progress here. The idea is that obviously it's going to be a coat hanger. I bought this piece of wood. It was a reclaimed piece of wood for about $14, so it's not shaped that well. Obviously you can see the cuts here are not really the greatest, but that's kind of why I bought this, and I just went for it. I didn't really have any idea of how to do the cuts. I've learned now that probably want to set it up with a stop block, and so then that way each piece is cut exactly the same. I still don't know exactly how to do that, but if somebody wants to show me maybe 5 minutes after the class here how to set that up, that would really help me out a lot, I think. The other thing I didn't do was I didn't mark them, so when I was cutting them, they just kind of went all over the place, and now I don't know which direction or which order they're supposed to go back into here. So yeah, so that's gonna be fun trying to correct that mistake. But I think the other thing here is there was a big old knot in here in this hole, and I wanted to fill it up. Well, I got some epoxy down at Ace, filled it up, let it sit for the 20 minutes, and then pulled it off, and sure enough, the whole thing came right out. And I'm pretty sure that's because I didn't actually go in and cut this out. It's all dead inside there, and I probably should have cut that out so that way you would, adhere to it a little bit better. So I'll have to go back in and correct that, or just not add this into that as well too. But I think probably the biggest thing I've learned so far is that had I done things just a little bit differently or maybe the right way, I wouldn't be spending so much time trying to correct my mistakes. Any questions? Thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. So these big pieces are going to be stationary, and then this will levitate out or pull out. I will drill holes through every piece here and put a dowel all the way through. These parts will just be mitered, at 45, and then that way they can be pulled out, and then you can hang, whatever you want on top of it. So a lot of sanding, a lot more, work to correction work to go back in here, but for $14, it's a good lesson. So, any other questions? Cool. Thank you.
Well, that's all that's on the list, but is there anybody else? Okay, Michael.
Yeah, hello all. Yeah, I've been a member now since February the 1st, so it's my first time up here. Apologize if I don't know all the protocols, but yeah, I just wanted to start with an easy project. I wanted to get a simple win under my belt. Then I remember I took the ham radio exam in 2018. Hadn't done anything with it, but what my first project, I decided to upgrade my ham radio. So I built a J-pole antenna. And what a ham radio allows you to do is pretty much to transmit on particular radio frequencies. So you have to take an exam, you have to get certified before you can do that. Without that exam, without a certification, you can only transmit, I believe, on CB and maybe the family radio station or something like that. But anyway, the repeaters in this area are 145 megahertz, so I decided to build a 2-meter antenna. So this is what it looks like. If this project doesn't work out, I think it might make a good trombone. So yeah, this is what it looks like over here. I'll sort of put it under here for just demonstration purposes. So I'd first like to thank a couple members. Rob and Ryan were extremely helpful. I think they've built these before, as have several other people that I'm learning about. It's not done. I would like some advice and help on it. But essentially, this is made from 1 10-foot length of just common hardware, half-inch copper tubing. So yeah, Rob and I spent maybe 3 hours just cutting, measuring, assembling, soldering some of these connections over here from the plumbing supply. It's soldered together just using regular plumbing solder, and then we got a couple relatively low-tech connections over here. One thing you have to do with these antennas is to get the lengths correct. I mentioned 145 megahertz. That corresponds to 2 meters. If you're able to freeze light and look at a waveform, it'll be 2 meters long. So this element over here is about 50 centimeters, so this corresponds to a quarter wavelength antenna. I do not understand antenna design, but so I'm just sort of spouting words I've read online. It's supposed to be a major upgrade to the antenna you get with the little radio, and it transmits omnidirectionally. What I need to do next is to actually hook up a device here which can measure the, this side over here? Yeah. So I need to hook up an SWR meter, which roughly speaking, tests the efficiency of the antenna and then slide these electrical contacts up and down until we hit like a maximum efficiency. And then I also need to learn how to do tap and die. I've never done that before. To install some screws here. And what the screws allow you to do is lengthen and shorten the antenna to hit that perfect sweet spot in the transmission. So yeah, that's my project. Thank you. Yes.
Are you going to use just an SWR meter, or do you have a network analyzer?
Is Rob here? Rob is not here. So there's something called a nano VNA. I never heard of a nano VNA, but it's like this AliExpress purchase. It's amazing, and it can actually send frequencies into the antenna that you define. So I defined 100 megahertz to 200 megahertz. It sweeps across it and shows you the SWR. So I do have that device, but I don't know how to use it very well. So again, I'd appreciate some advice. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, it's a network analyzer. Yeah, I think. Has anyone else made one of these before? Like, can I have a show of hands of everyone who's made one of these? So two members here. Very cool. All right. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Yeah. I'm not going to pass it around. I'm not going to pass it around.
Oh, I don't like it. Yeah, you can kind of almost think of it as a javelin, right? But not on Valentine's Day, please. Anybody else? Okay, we'll get on to announcements then. We got some classes coming up. I didn't check to see if they were sold out or not, so I'm going to kind of go through them. There's Machining 100, and is that still openings? It's sold out? Sorry. Let's Learn to Draw. You talked about that earlier, Susanna. We must still have spots?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I did learn to draw, not learn to check your email, so.
Okay. Well, maybe we can learn to go to the knoxmakers.org website and go to events. All of these are posted there, and you can get your tickets as well.
Is that BYOW or is it supply?
I am going to bring some. You could bring some too, and then we'll have a lot for Helen.
Okay, we have Intro to Metalworking. Joe, I saw you in here. Is that sold out?
I also am aware.
Okay, that's all right. Saturday, not sold out. We have several things going on in addition to the Intro to Metalworking, but not sold out is the Stitch and Bitch. That's 1 to 4 o'clock. Come in. We have a good time talking and sharing and stitching. Sometime that day as well is the Milling 101, sold out. Then we have Whack and Hack out in the blacksmith shop on Sunday, the 19th. The board meeting, just in case you're not into hammering with your arms, you can that's virtual. Intro to Metalworking on the 22nd, Anatomy of a Keyboard. Paul talked about that earlier. And then an embroidery auth. I know the calendar shows it sold out right now, but there will be one ticket coming up. So that's all we have for classes. Again, check it out on the website. I need a volunteer to help with the trash pickup. All right, thank you, Amy. And I didn't notice if we need the filters changed. Would you check? Thank you, Zach. And thank you both. We're a community here. We all pitch in. Nobody gets paid. We all do it out of love. Happy Valentine's Day, Knox Makers. Let's go make.